Mitch, I know we are looking for a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater on the Fringe.
Why not?
I mean, it could work, but
Yeah. See this now you're getting to areas that are possible.
that could work.
Yeah.
Maybe it can work. I'm gonna put a I'm gonna put a check mark next to that. Possible.
It's not exciting. I don't think we're going to get any more
Yeah,
listeners, you know.
I
But
know it's funny. I was thinking because Emery has a tagline that we're on the move. Emery's on the
mhm.
move, and then I was thinking of some other organization could be. It's like my organization out and about. It's like, oh, here's when we post, like we're out in the community supporting them. And these things are like so simple, but sometimes the simple is the most effective. We'll see. We'll keep working on it.
There you go.
Well, this
One
is
of
the
these days.
yeah. This is the business of theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford,
I'm Mitch Weiss.
and let's get down to business. So the reason I suggested On the Fringe as a working title is because as we speak now, the Edinburgh Festival Fringe is up and running, and we had just read an article recently about the 3,500 productions that
Can
the
you
shows are
even
making.
fathom 3,500 shows happening at the same time?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you have? A million and a half people? No. Who fills those seats? I can't even fathom this thing.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about it, particularly for Edinburgh Fringe, is that it is essentially a month-long festival, and over the course of the month, there will be 3,500 shows.
Still doesn't matter.
But
It's
I know, but it gets so interesting once you drill down because you'll find out that those shows aren't all of those shows aren't running for a great length of time. I think they run. I think their runs are arguably shorter than like a typical regional theater's production run. That
yeah.
might be like
Well,
3 or 4 weeks.
how would they get an audience? You're only going to run them as long as you think you might get somebody in a seat.
I know, and this is such the interesting thing about Edinburgh Fringe. If you're here, let's say you're on the East Coast of the United States, you're coming from New York or Philly or DC maybe, and if you do have any notoriety, you have it in your own community. And so now you're going to a literal foreign land.
Mhm.
And you're trying to build attention, and there's interesting things over the years like Fringe. um like we learned that if you're going to be in the Fringe guide, it's better to have a title that is earlier in the alphabet than later, because if you're looking at it alphabetically,
Well, yeah,
the name
our
matters.
press agent friend. Every time we work on a commissioning a show, we advise the playwright to try to make their titles start between A and E.
Hmm.
And that comes from the days where there used to be the ABCs in the New York Times, which used to be the primary source of where
Mhm.
people found Broadway shows. And they found that tourists tended to only look at the first column,
Mm.
and they would pick their show for the first column starting with A, which of
Yeah.
course is why there's a chorus line, even though chorus line C is still okay. But it was something that they always advised us. I don't know if it's as true now. Certainly, Hamilton is still a hit without being there.
Mhm.
But for the most part, it was a way to get started. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I
But
do.
what's the other thing? Which, by the way, that article that you started to refer to said that the average audience size was 3 people
Yeah.
for 3,500 shows. You spend all that money, that effort, that time, and you end up with an average.
Mhm.
That means some got less than 3 people,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And they're not, and there's probably a huge amount of them who only have 3 people, and they have to run the show because it's in all the guides that there's a show. Somebody might be 10 minutes late, and you decide not to run the show because no one was there.
Right.
7 people show up, you can't. I think it's interesting because the expense is great to participate in Edinburgh Fringe, but I think you have to go there with other intentions. Like you have to think about, well, this is going to get my internationally produced credit. Perhaps I can capture this while I'm here and make something of it later. Like you think about all the other things you can do, because honestly, if you are producing in the Fringe in Edinburgh, you're not really you're not really tourist. Like you are in the mindset of promoting your show the whole time that you're there. And there's other opportunities. I forget, well, they have these sections on the what's called the Royal Mile. It's like the sort of the main street of Edinburgh, and in that space, you can busk, you can be a busker, and I think you have to sign up for these. There are various little
Mm.
stages and spaces where you can kind of tease your work, and if people are watching, they might decide to come see your full project.
Now, what makes Edinburgh so famous and so overblown compared to all the other festivals around the world? I know here in New York, I have been part of or researched at least a dozen different festivals, including the New York Fringe, which is a whole different animal than the Edinburgh Fringe.
Hmm.
Most of these festivals are very expensive and provide almost no help if for the playwright or the actors in it.
Yeah.
I found them to be, and it may not be fair. I don't know that everyone intends to be a ripoff, but I find them to be a ripoff. They inspire you to think somebody worthwhile is going to see it, and it's in New York.
Yeah.
And the truth is, almost nobody comes.
Well, I think perhaps it's because some people have had success over the years in Edinburgh Fringe. I think like if you go all the way back to like I don't know, like Spalding Gray, for example.
That's way back.
I know that's like way back, but people have carried all that into the future and said it. And now more modern, they're thinking like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who presented Fleabag, a version of Fleabag at Edinburgh Fringe, and it was so popular that it ended up getting picked up by Amazon, and
Hmm.
then Amazon did a series for 2 seasons, or I saw another thing that was talking about the first show that in Edinburgh where Benedict Cumberbatch was in the production, and his name alone you
Of
know
course.
would draw attention. And then there's a lot of comedians who go to Edinburgh, and I do think that some of the appeal is that I'm able to produce something international, and have that. Perhaps I can extend my audience by being here, but you're also like going up against the saturation of it all too.
Yeah, it just seems like it's a different kind of wall that you're knocking your head against.
Hmm.
The first wall, which I totally understand, is nobody else is going to produce my show, so I'm going to do it. And here's a place that is world renowned and has a lot of other people producing their own stuff. So maybe I have as equal a chance as they do, even
Hmm.
though that's a false narrative.
Yeah, and I
Um,
I think a lot of it is dreaming too. Like we're in this space where the young adults realize, like I heard a conversation the other day, and I was like, I totally understand that. This young man was talking about how he saw how hard his parents had to work and how they struggled and didn't seem to get everything they wanted out of all of that. And so instead of pursuing that job market, they pursued other paths and thought, I could be an influencer. It's like everybody wants to be an influencer because the thought process is, if I can just engage a handful of people who will stick with me, then I can make something out of that. And it's kind of the same thing when you see when you see that there was potential for success here, like, the conversation in theater is that, oh, people aren't coming to the theater as much as because they're sitting on the couch watching Netflix. And if they are watching Netflix, then they may have seen Richard Gadd's Baby Reindeer, which also was presented at Edinburgh Fringe.
Hmm.
you know or if you're like, nah, I love theater, I'm not going to give up on it, like, you may have seen Six, and Six was at Edinburgh Fringe, and got and built its popularity there. Um, and it's just, you see that happens, and everybody's like, it could happen to me, instead
Right,
of
but
just saying, like, let me just find something to do consistently.
yeah, and like
You know.
again, my argument would be, so if you have 3,500 shows and six that particular year is one of 3,500, my
Hmm.
argument would be is that one out of 3,500 can find producers, and
Hmm.
they don't even need the festival,
True.
right? It's still the same percentage. It's just which way do you want to try it?
Yeah.
My argument with festivals is how much money it costs to participate.
Hmm.
Well, let's talk about, you were there. Where do
Yeah.
you live? How do they fit 3,500 people into this tiny town?
So I think it was a little different for me. I went to Edinburgh as press.
Hmm.
And so when I applied for press credentials as Emory, and I was accepted. So I got a press badge for Fringe Arts, which meant that now I'm on the press list, and so now I'm going to get direct invitations from the PR people who are behind these shows. And then what I did is I
Speaking of which, by the way, so are you saying that it's important for the producers of the shows at Edinburgh to hire press people
press
in order
people,
to get
yes,
somebody to see it?
yes, and we've had
Even
many.
more expense. Do you have
Mhm.
any idea how much they charge?
Not sure,
Okay.
because a lot of the press that I received were from some of the fringe hubs. So, like,
Hmm.
the Pleasance Playground, or Underbelly, or there's a handful of other places that act as hubs, because they essentially um, curate elements of the fringe. Like, they accept some of these artists that are coming in,
Okay.
and so then it's the machine that is bringing people to Underbelly, for example, might be the one doing the press for everything that's happening in their venue. But also, the year that I went, because I'm coming from Philadelphia, there was a collective of Drexel students who are part of the entertainment um, program. They were there, like, doing content, like, promoting fringe artists, and I think some of the artists that were coming from Philadelphia. Um, but in terms of where I stayed, so it was just me, and so I was trying to get to Edinburgh for 10 years, and I didn't know what to do. And so one of my friends, who is a solo artist, name is Chris Davis. Chris Davis does a lot of he has a handful of solo pieces that he can present at the ready. And he's currently doing a 40-year-old ballerino. Uh, and and so he's had shows like that. And so over the years that I've been rep radio, I've sat and talked to Chris. And Chris is like, if you're going to Edinburgh, you need to reach out to Chris Davis. If you're here in Philadelphia and you're listening, Chris Davis, got to
Hmm.
reach out to him. But I talked to him and I said, so what is your mindset when you're here? He said, he did say in some sense that a lot of people, when they get here, they're so excited about it, and they're like, oh, the show was good. We did a good show. Let's go out and celebrate. And Chris would more likely go right home, or go to Sainsbury, or some of the local shops, and buy groceries, go home, and make dinner. He looked at it as, I am living here and working here during the festival, and so I'm carving out some time to enjoy himself, but primarily saying, like, my task is, I need to rest, I need to replenish, and I need to get back out there and promote my show. But over the years, that was taking its toll, and then ultimately, Edinburgh started a free fringe, was kind of like an offshoot of the Fringe Festival, where venues would sign up for this, and then they would welcome an artist into the space. They're doing essentially a trunk show that doesn't have an upfront cost.
Hmm.
And then at the end of the show, if you liked what you see, you can drop a coin in the bucket. You can buy, like Chris would sell T-shirts, and all of those things, and that was more beneficial to him than trying to produce in the festival. Under the particulars of the festival, which are expensive. But I was also there one year with another company who had a team of 7, I think, who were in their show, and the producer who was also in the show, um, did a limited run at a local theater in Philadelphia to raise money to go to Fringe. And then when they went, they secured an apartment, for their entire team. It was a huge place. It had like 4 rooms, and it had a large living room. So it was like there were places for everyone to kind of plop and
I
exist.
I assume he had to do this far ahead.
Yes, yes. And I think that's the tricky part. It's kind of like, if any of the listeners ever go to New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con, there's a part of it where it's like, should I secure the accommodations first or get the ticket and then security accommodations? Like some of that you just have to, I'm going, and
Yeah.
plan those things as early as possible, and then the hope to get placed, because you do get placed in these spaces that produce. But it was,
So again, where did you stay?
oh yes, the jumping around, because it was just me. I stayed at a hostel. Um, I found a I found a youth hostel that was about a mile from city center, which is a
Wow.
a simple walk. Like I can,
Yeah.
my walk to the gym, my walk to work is 1 mile. So I stayed there. I didn't even know where it was. Like I never visualized Edinburgh, and so I wasn't sure, but I was happy to find out it wasn't that far. It was a youth hostel, which meant that there was a range of, like, there were young school groups, there were families, father sons, things like that. Like it was a good mix of people. So I stayed in a hostel. The room that I had 3 bunk beds in it, and so 6 people stayed in that room. There were there were cubbies. Everybody had a locker, kind of a locker, to put all your stuff in, and then in the basement there was a common kitchen, and everybody could use the kitchen. You just had to label your stuff in the fridge. And so it was a commercial kitchen they had downstairs. And so you would just go buy stuff, and then you'd go there and cook. Yeah, so I stayed there. And even though being there with 6 people sounds like a lot, the way people move through a hostel, you might meet somebody one day and they're gone the next. Like
Right.
I met a guy who was coming in from, he was on his way to Ireland, but he stopped in Edinburgh, and I forget where he was coming from, but he was only here for 2 days, and he wasn't here for the festival. And so that was interesting.
Well, how far ahead did you have to reserve? Because I will say, when I was traveling
Hmm.
through Europe by train,
Yeah.
uh, was unexpectedly passing near. I don't even remember the name of the town because it was so small in Germany. And we got off the train. There were 3 of us, and we went. We have to find a place to
Yeah.
stay, and
Yeah.
we found the youth hostel.
Hmm.
And the next morning we were gone anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing.
And so they do have that kind of flexibility. What I experienced was the only limitations were that they could not accommodate me for the amount of time I wanted to stay.
Mm.
So that was it, because they do have a lot of like one-offs, and so their rooms are turning over a lot. But I did when I knew I was going to Edinburgh, I started in January for August. And
Wow.
so I got savvy over time. I looked at there's an app called Hopper
Hmm.
that lets you search for flights and hotel accommodations, but you can also create what's called a watch list where you can keep an eye on the cost of your airfare. And Hopper would send you a notification when the airfare got to a point where they didn't think it was going to change, and so they would say, "Now's a good time to buy. You should do it now. Like this has been the lowest price in 3 months, and we don't foresee it getting any lower." And
Okay.
so you jump on that and you get it. But also for the hostel, and I didn't know how to figure that out. So there's a there was a couple of apps that I used. One was called Hostel World, and Hostel World is connected to hostels all over the place. I was able to see them in Philly, see them in New York, but see them in Edinburgh. And so I booked one. I booked one from Hostel World.
So but you were able to see it before you booked it.
Yeah,
They're visuals.
the
Yeah, the
photos that they
photos.
had, and
Mhm.
I felt better about a hostel than trying to find an apartment or like a room to stay in because it could have been like, oh, I mean the room is here, but there's seven other people that, and this is a house, the structure is like a
How
home versus.
expensive was it?
At the time, the first time I was there, I stayed for a week, and it came to a little over $300
Okay,
to
that's
stay
for
in
the
the house.
hostel, right?
Yeah, because it was like 40 between $40 and $60 a night or something like that.
So now, how did you choose out of 3,500 shows which ones to see?
hmm So for me, because I was coming from the States, I I looked at my Philadelphia social channels that I was following and my New York channels because when I lived in New York, I did a lot of interviews. And so I was connected to like Frigid and Under St. Mark's and all those you know, those fringy kind of venues, improv.
Hmm.
There was a lot of improv that was making their way to Edinburgh. And so I think I posted online, bound for Edinburgh, who's coming with me? Something like that. And there was a lot of people from New York that was like, I'm doing a show. You should touch base with me. And the people from Philly, definitely. And so I primarily knew that I was covering them. And then once I was probably a month before I got there, I started getting inundated with press releases.
Mm.
And so the press releases were great. It was like, here are the productions I'm repping. Let me know what you're interested in. And so I could really just go through the list. And it's very similar with Fringe Arts here in Philly. Um, there's a list and we just fill out a form and let them know what we want to see. And then they will work
But
to make those available.
what was your criteria, though?
My criteria, in general, I was looking for uh, Edinburgh Fringe lets you sort by genre. You can also sort by locate, like where people are coming from. And so I was looking at, productions coming from the United States. And
Okay,
so I was able to break it down like that. Um, I was also I was also sorting out the time frame that I was there because I was not in Edinburgh the whole time. So I'm like, okay, what's available in this window of time? I was also looking at genres too. I was particularly interested in LGBTQ programming, and
hmm,
so I did a search for those things, and that helped me sort of curate. And then also the people that I already knew I was going to meet and interview, they were making suggestions, which was so great. Like I met a guy who did a show called Trump Lear, and it was so good and it was very popular. And so I had a nice chat with him about the journey of creating this piece, and I even talked to him about like, how do you, like, don't tell me exactly, but like, how do you make money off of this? Like, what are you doing? And at the time, I remember him saying, like, when it's all said and done at the end of the year, producing this show, he makes about 60,000 a year just
really?
just doing the show. But I think that was because it was Trump, it was King Lear, it was
But
all of
that
these.
isn't that the thing? It's a quote
Yeah,
unquote. It's a gimmick.
it's sexy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a, right. You put the name,
Hmm.
the old joke. It's not a joke. Joan Rivers, the
Yeah.
comedian, she had a Broadway show that lost money,
Hmm.
and she went on, I think, Johnny Carson or some talk show the week after, and said she figured out that her next show, how it was going to be an automatic hit.
Mm.
She was going to name it Neil Simon's newest hit comedy, because he always makes money, and she would just use his name on it.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad idea. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter what your show's about. And that's always been my argument, that you don't create a promo image or an elevator speech based on what's accurate
Mm.
about your show. You base it on what will a stranger who knows nothing about your show, what what would make them want to buy a ticket when they
Yeah.
know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do remember seeing a lot of posters where the cast was naked,
Hmm.
because nudity sells.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it's like, how do you stand out? And honestly, I just said I'm over here to follow the Americans who make their way, and then everything else is gonna be bonus. And
Were,
that just
were
made it easier for me.
were most of the shows you saw short?
Um, Everything was about an hour.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's pretty short.
Hmm. And I got to see quite a bit of improv, which is it's just fun. It's just while you're there, you're at this place, they have beer, and you're just gonna have fun for the hour, and you're gonna also witness these actors flexing their muscles, and so
Wait,
their
I want to be
great
clear. The
muscles.
guy who made 60,000, that wasn't from the Fringe
No, that was throughout the year.
over the year.
Yeah.
I just don't want anyone to
Hmm.
think that you can make that money at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Yeah. But so this is the part that's exciting about the Fringe. So I interviewed a young man named Samuel Morrison. Um, he's a comedian,
Hmm.
and he had this show. He had this show called Yes Daddy or something. It was a picture of him in leather,
Hmm.
like bondage gear and so on. And it was he was telling a story about um, his queer awakening and his interest in daddy types and so on. And then later, so I interviewed him, and that was great. That was 2009, right? Later on, he further develops this piece. It gets all kinds of acclaim, and it was like I met that guy.
Hmm.
I met him. That's so awesome. And now I'm still connected to him. And it's been interesting to see how he's been able to take his own life and move with it. And I don't know if necessarily Fringe was the catalyst, but it helped.
Hmm.
I think the show was called well, the show that is getting the acclaim now is called Sugar Daddy, but there was a version of the show that he brought to Fringe, and then built it out.
Well, as you know, I'm a strong believer in the first draft is never
Hmm.
worthy. You have to stick with something and keep rewriting and
Yeah.
retesting it, and taking the hard knock criticism and going back and doing it again. Hamilton is 8.5 years in the making. It's not overnight,
Hmm.
right? So every show, even if it's a piece of junk at the beginning, has the potential if you can stick with it long enough.
Yeah.
But you have to keep putting it in front of an audience and keep rewriting it in between each time, because reading it doesn't help,
Hmm.
right? That's the great thing about these
Yeah.
festivals. To me, if you can find value in seeing your work or feeling your work and knowing what was successful and what wasn't, then it becomes worthwhile, but it still costs you money,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's the hardest part about our business. right? I do remember in the music industry, I don't, and especially in the 1980s, I think that was when rock and roll and pop musicians were, oh, I can have a home studio.
Hmm.
So they all went out and spent $40,000, and they didn't have anything that they wrote that was worthwhile, but they had a home studio, right?
Yeah.
So the point being is watch how you spend your money. I've watched, there was one horrible example here in New York. I don't want to name the festival, it doesn't exist anymore. But there's a man in Ohio who had a four-person musical, and he brought it to New York thinking, and this is, I interviewed him.
Mm.
He said somebody, either a critic is going to show up, I'll get some response, or we'll have an audience and they'll spread the word that this is a worthwhile show.
Mm.
So he flew in his cast. They did the show. I think the festival allowed them to have three performances. He had never had more than 10 people in the audience. The most promotion the festival did was let him pay for a postcard, which
Mm.
sat there and he knew nobody in New York. So who's going to come see his show when there are 90 other shows every night to
Hmm.
go see? Why would they see his if they don't know him and they haven't heard about the show? And the festival did nothing more but list all the shows that you could go see.
Mm.
There wasn't that opportunity. Nobody is on the street hawking. Nobody, is saying, "Oh, here's some free newsletter that actually reaches people." And in those days, actually, there wasn't even email.
Hmm.
So he was stuck, and he spent tens of thousands of dollars to do this, and walked away with nothing.
Huh.
And that is my warning to everybody. It's not about dreaming who's going to come. It has to be worth the expense. And by the way, this particular festival didn't even provide him with a stage manager.
Mm.
Some of them do. All they did was say, we will give you three different times, not necessarily at prime time. So you can end up with a show at 11 o'clock in the morning and one at 1 a.m. Again, who's coming?
Hmm. Yeah.
Right?
1 a.m.
Right? Well, they were giving, everyone had one prime time, 7 or 8 o'clock, and the rest had to be at some other odd time
Hmm.
because they had to split the venues amongst everybody who had signed up for the festival.
Well, here's what's been interesting about Fringe in general. Um, Also, before we move on, I want to say that the piece that Sam Morrison did in Edinburgh was called "Hello, Daddy."
Hmm.
Hello, comma Daddy, and and then and a more evolved piece went on to acclaim. B- but what has been interesting about Fringe goers is that they are in the mindset of these shows are an hour, they're bite size, and so I've got a dance card of a 5 or 6 shows I'm going to today, you know,
Right.
or it's like, especially here because the segment of fringe arts of the Fringe Festival that is called the neighborhood festival is it's all over the city. And so depending on where you are, you might curate, okay, I'm going to be in West Philly, and so I'm going to go see a few shows in West Philly. I'm going to be in Old City. I'm going to see shows there and so on. People are in that mindset in September here for the Fringe, but we don't carry that throughout the year too much. Like our shows are very specific during the year. The show's at 7 or it's at
Hmm.
2 or it's at 3, you know. But that was something I thought was interesting about the Fringe, and I wondered, like, how come we don't think about that? Movie theaters have tons of show times, and I'm sure they know that there are some times that are peak, but that convenience allows people to decide whenever they want to
You
go.
know that there's a big difference
Yeah.
because the movie, when you rent or lease a movie in your theater,
Hmm.
when you and let's say you're paying them $10,000 a day, right? Well, if you can say, well, I'm paying by the day, I'm going to have as many shows as I can. It's still costing me $10,000. I
Mm,
might as well, if I only get 3 people at 9 in the morning, it's 3 more people paying toward that 10,000. When
yeah.
you do theater, you're paying for every live person
Hmm.
who has to show up again, and every crew member, and every anything you have to pay for. So it's not the same thing. You don't have a flat fee,
True.
and that's why we don't have 9 a.m. shows.
Well, I'm not talking about the cost. I'm talking about the flexibility. So, for instance, like I don't have to, I don't have to tell the theater in advance that before the film's even released that I'm coming on the 18th at 7.
Hmm.
I can actually decide today, if it's not opening weekend. And I know that that's different, but what I'm saying is that I'm not thinking about whether 1 o'clock is a good time to go see a show. And but in theater, we don't really have it as an option
No, we
unless
don't.
unless it's a weekend. Because I even the way we coordinate going to New York, if we're not staying overnight, we're going on the weekend because there's a matinee, and so we're trying to catch a matinee so we can get home in a decent hour.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's just interesting how that mindset is for the festival. Like, no one told them to do it that way. They just realized there's so much here that I want to see. But I imagine someone who's going to a film festival thinks the same thing, especially if they have a pass. Like, they're going to go to a bunch of shows and queue it all up. Um, but it's just interesting how that carries through, but it's only for that energy that is tied to the festival.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wish and this is what creates the interest in these festivals.
Hmm.
We don't know how to satisfy. There are two things: satisfying those of us who are hungry for theater
Hmm.
versus how we convince people who aren't hungry to pay for a ticket.
Yeah.
It is night and day,
Hmm.
right? There are places in which you could probably uh, run 5, 6 shows a day and people would show up. And then there
Hmm.
are other people who you better tell them in advance that Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep, and Barbara Streisand, and Ariana Grande, and Cynthia Erivo are all in the same show, right? And it's only once, and they'll be there. That's the only thing that'll get them there.
And Jake Gyllenhaal might stop by.
He's extra.
It's
You know,
like an
you,
open part. He can pop
right.
in when he wants.
And it's an improv show, right?
Well, it's interesting what you were saying about gimmicks, right? And so perhaps that is something that theater has to think about.
Well, I
Is
think they already do. Some of the failures are the ones that are, well, there are two reasons. One, it may not be a good show,
Mhm.
but also they don't have those. There are, I've seen some shows. I remember Fugard plays that absolutely blew me away.
Mm.
And if it wasn't that it was a regional theater and it was the only show they had while I was in town, I might not have seen it. And I remember walking out and saying, one of the best shows I've ever seen. And I don't know who else does it, where
Yeah.
else it's done. But, this is stuff that sticks with you in your life. But how would you have gotten me there if it wasn't my only choice? And I
Mhm.
wanted to see theater,
Yeah. I know, and
right?
I know that my view is skewed because I've always engaged in theater from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that everybody can't just go to Edinburgh and get a press credential and then go see whatever
No.
they want. um and also, when you think about it, the festival is also competing with Edinburgh, because somebody's choosing Edinburgh at in August because maybe the other option would have been December, because Christmas in Edinburgh is supposed to be just as worthwhile.
Well,
um, but there's so much to do, and that so I know for me, I was saying like I'm gonna spend the day like exploring Edinburgh, and then I'm gonna start going to shows in the evening. And
Mhm.
so I did schedule it out, and I was so glad that I was able to plan and sort of grid out my experience so that I didn't feel like I was rushing to do anything, and I wasn't trying to get all 3,500 shows.
Right.
I definitely said, look, if I can get to 20 shows in the week, that's amazing. I definitely wanted to see the shows I was covering. And it was easier for me to reach out to them and say, I would love to, chat with you about your show. Can I come and see it? And then, if would you have time to talk about it afterwards? Because the show's an hour. So after an hour, they're going to come sit with me or plan it before. Some of the infrastructure that Edinburgh provides is a space they call Fringe Central, and it has been a partnership with the University of Edinburgh for a while.
Okay.
And so, because I guess the university's out of session at the time, and so, they took over a whole building, and it became the nerve center of the festival. And so there was like a common space where they were doing programming, but there was also like a cafe there, and there was resources that you could take. There was like a mini fringe shop where you could buy like fringe apparel and whatnot. But I was able to schedule all of my interviews there, have
Nice.
people meet me at Fringe Central, and then we just sat amongst everybody. I'm like, "Hi, we're here at Fringe Central. This chaos and crazy is the festival, and here we are." And I'm just sitting at a table, and yeah, it was that I thought was really great for all the artists in terms of like their participation in the festival, being able to come to a central place, which wasn't exactly. I mean, it was central. There was a lot going on around it. But it was that was great. But that doesn't think about how people are where people are going to stay. And I know that Edinburgh had a new program this year that allowed for more housing. But I don't know all the details of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, I know this is a complete non sequitur,
Hmm.
but based on just us talking about the theater folk that are hungry for this stuff,
Hmm.
I wanted to bring up that this past weekend was the 50th anniversary of a chorus line.
Hmm.
This is about as far from the Fringe Festival as we can get. And that's the other problem, by the way, is something that is larger than one or two people or seven people cannot be done in America without lots of money.
Yeah.
It isn't done. It's really a struggle. You know that my company, the farm, has tried that, and
Hmm.
we have been working on it. But it's tricky, expensive, and difficult to develop a show like that. But Chorus Line, and I was invited to this. I had a family reunion the same weekend. I was part of when Chorus Line became the longest running show in Broadway history. I was one of the managers.
Mm.
It was still the highlight of my life. There was nothing close to it. Nothing theatrically that I've worked on was at the level of excitement, the highest standard of anything theater can do, and just emotionally so involving. It seems they were able to replicate that feeling this past weekend.
Mm.
Everyone who is still alive who has ever been in Chorus Line seems to have shown up, except me. And a few, there were a few others who actually. I once shared an apartment with a swing. I'll name him Fraser Ellis, who was in Chorus Line for many years. Lives now in Texas and has left the business. Um, he um, he couldn't make it either. So there were the dance captain who was there for 12 years didn't make it. So I'm not the only one. But they had panels with Donna McKechnie, Priscilla Lopez, Kelly Bishop. These are the originals. Um, and they look phenomenal. They can still sing. I think they can still dance. They didn't push them.
Mm.
They put on a show of parts. Byork Lee, who was the original Connie Wong in the show, has Michael Bennett, the original creator, director, choreographer. Uh, when he passed away, he left her the reins to direct and choreograph his A Chorus Line throughout the world. And she has done it in almost every country. She just finished working with Antonio Banderas in Spain.
Hmm.
She's done it in Japan and China. She's done it everywhere. In America, in every state. She sent out tours. She is delightful. She has the heart and spirit of what that show is about, which is we love being part of theater. We love singing. We love dancing. We love acting. We put our hearts on the line, which is what A Chorus Line is.
Yeah.
So they did that this past weekend. They did a flash mob of the finale in front of the Lincoln Center Theater.
Hmm.
Everyone who has ever been in the finale, including in their high school, seems to have shown up. You can see it on
Wow.
YouTube. And they did the finale, all the moves with the hat and the whole bit. It's very exciting. There are also bits from the show that they put on. For example, Donna McKechnie, the original Cassie, who won the Tony, she came out and sung Music in the Mirror. And when the dance part, which she created and just stole the show with, happened, out came 3 other Cassies who have done it, who are younger, and they danced it.
Hmm.
So, and that's on YouTube. You can see it. It's very exciting, and I just wanted to say that this is still one of the shows that I think people who love theater get emotional about.
Hmm.
You know, those who love Cats or Phantom or Wicked or all these other shows that people can adore, it's not the same thing as something that speaks to theater folk,
Yeah.
right?
This is why I feel like we have to put more we need to shine a light on the people
Mm-hmm.
more, because these emotional ties that we build for for our involvement in theater, like that's the stuff that everybody doesn't get to see. Like we're showing like a polished product, but we're not showing all the work that went into it. Not saying we have to show everything, but I'm saying like the things that like there's all this behind the scenes about Wicked, and they show how like everybody's just a love fest. Everyone loves each other. They're so exciting, but also like this day, which looks beautiful, was super hot. It was like 90s, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all in full costume and everything. And understanding those things, you go, wow, like the fact that their behind the scenes pulled back and showed that Shiz was basically built in a parking lot, you know, and how it had to stay there, and how it was completely encapsulated, and how they use, you know.
But see, that's again one of the reasons Chorus Line stands out. And for those, if you can see the movie Every Little Step,
Mhm.
that is behind the scenes. That is the making of the revival of A Chorus Line on Broadway.
Mm.
It is the closest thing to what Michael Bennett intended A Chorus Line to be on film, because the movie of A Chorus Line, let's face it, is a piece of junk. It's unfortunately not the right version of A Chorus Line.
Mm.
So, but Every Little Step is, and it's I think even considered a documentary. It goes from casting right through the show, which of course is what A Chorus Line is. It's a casting call
Mhm.
for dancers in the chorus,
Yeah.
right? So for emotional, anybody who loves this stuff, the Fringe, and this is why it came to mind. I hadn't even thought about this, although I've been talking to people about the 50th anniversary all week. It hadn't even occurred to me until we just talked about the love that these people have to do in order to, and the dreaming
Mhm.
to get to the Fringe.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. If you sat down and figured out how much money you're going to lose how difficult it is. You have to stay in a hostel. I'm sorry, Darnell. How many people want to live in a hostel for a week? I want a nice hotel room with air conditioning and a nice restaurant. I don't want to live that way. And yeah, and I don't want to see 1 hour shows. And you know my personal taste. Anything with only one person in it, I ain't going. So
Yeah.
that's what half the shows at
Yeah.
the Fringe. So now we're talking about where are the shows I wanted to see.
Well, well,
They're they got larger casts. There's a lot of interaction. They take big risks, and they're about topics that aren't just like everybody else's topic.
hmm
That's what I'm interested in.
well,
So where do I go for that? Where? I go to La Jolla. That's one show at a time. Or I go to Louisville or to the Guthrie Theater. But these are in other cities. I can't travel to see a show,
hmm
right?
well, um,
Or, by the way, let me plug it. Buena Vista Social Club on Broadway. Talk about something that just isn't the ordinary and just makes you feel great about theater.
yeah.
It's just, it's the, I hate, I don't want to make it sound like it's a chorus line. It's not. But it just was a lovely, exciting evening of music, dance, singing, the best, the best talent in New York, and half of it's in Spanish, and it doesn't matter. It's beautiful. Anyway, that's my promotion. Moving on.
I was going to say that had I gone with my partner, I don't know that I would have chosen a hostel. It was just me. I was
Mhm.
there for press, and I was thinking about like I want to I'm not going to stay in the hotel, so I don't need to
If
commit
you
to.
could get the hotel, I'm told that they sell out in a heartbeat.
Yeah, but I just knew that I wasn't going to spend a lot of time wherever my accommodations were. And so that's
Hmm.
why I didn't mind. That's why I didn't mind being in the hostel, and I had never been in a hostel before. And so at that time I was pleasantly surprised at how functional it was. And I was like, this is actually that's not true. I did stay in a hostel when I was in Boston. And but I stayed in like a it was like a two it was a two-bed hostel, like the room, and it was
Hmm.
me and my best friend went, so that was fine. But yeah, I didn't know what to expect about Edinburgh, and I just knew that I was going to be out exploring, and so I just needed a place to drop my bags, and that's exactly what it gave me, and so that worked out.
Yeah, no, you don't have to make an excuse for it.
No,
I
no, no.
just,
I'm just explaining how that, if it depends on how you want to experience things, because the same thing,
well,
like people come to New York and say that New York is expensive. It is
yeah.
to do certain things, but it depends on what you're trying to do. Like, I mean, my visit is a trip to the drama bookshop, you know, a, a general one of the general places I go to eat, and I'm basically walking around, so I don't spend a ton of money. But if somebody's like, "No, we're going to a show," we're going to wait in TKTS to get tickets for the show. We're also going to eat on Times Square because that'll be fun. We're also going to take our kids to the Hershey store, and they're going to spend way too much, and it's going to melt before they even get home. You know, we're going to go to the Harry Potter shop, and we can't leave without spending a lot of money in there. And so when it's all said and done, they've dropped a lot of coin because they don't get the opportunity to come to New York. If you're from
Well, and
Kansas.
let's be honest. Even for those of us who live here and who
Mhm.
do know how to
Yeah,
shave a nickel off
yeah.
of a dime, right?
How
It
to
still costs a lot of money, and there are times where you just say, "I may have friends working on that show, but they are not giving me a free ticket. It's a
Mhm.
hit. I'm
Yeah,
still
they
going to have
might.
to buy a ticket. They may be nice and help me pick the right seat,
Mm.
but they can't help me." And you get to a certain age, and you become. I would not say when I was younger that bougie fit my description, but but now, absolutely. I do not want to suffer. And that means that I will choose not to do certain things,
Yeah.
right? It's the same thing. I despise airports and air planes because they treat you like, I prefer to be in a Greyhound bus. I think it's easier, you know. But that's because at a certain point in life, you say, I've already traveled the world. I've already seen all this stuff. Now, if it's difficult, I don't want it.
From the
So,
Dardanelles to the mountains of Peru.
there you go. So, but we talk about theater again, and this is a whole nother topic for us. How do we make it easy? One of the things that happened, this is in the 70s, actually. Now I'm really dating the world. There used to be only one way to buy a theater ticket, and that was at the box office or a ticket broker
agent, yeah.
who had little shops in Times Square. And you went in there and they took a surcharge on top of the ticket, right? Now, once they figured out that they could sell it remotely and somebody in Idaho could buy a ticket in advance, it opened tons of windows. Unfortunately, there are surcharges. So now things get more expensive because we're selling more tickets.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have the half price ticket booth. And quite honestly, and I would swear to this in court, the day that they created the half price ticket booth is the day they raised the prices on Broadway. So that half price was more or enough for them to break even by letting those people in. So tickets were less than half price before the half price ticket booth. You know, it's capitalism. They just come up with a way to con us. And now the trick is, how do you go see wonderful new work and not end up in a seat that's going to make you uncomfortable, with sitting next to someone who is 450 pounds and smells, in a place with obstructed views because they didn't warn you about it, and then finding out it's 3.5 hours long because you didn't do your research. Our job as theater administrators and managers and promoters is to make sure the audience knows as much as they can so they can just enjoy the show.
Yeah.
And we have done only, in my opinion, a half-assed version of it. What you've told me about Edinburgh, and you know, I've spoken to you about this before. I learned more listening to you right now than I knew from reading about it for 20 years. Nowhere could I find that information. And the 3,500 shows, that's only because there was an article that we read this week.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that many.
Well, there is a guide when you get there.
But that's when you're going. How do I decide to go if I don't have the information?
Oh, yeah. So their website is pretty robust. And if you're on their mailing list, they start sending information like well in advance about like how to plan your visit and things like that. And they also had
that doesn't, but see, again, it's having the title of the show A through E. I'm only going to look so far. I'm not going to their website when I have Broadway, off-Broadway, regional theater, nonprofit, off-Broadway, all available to me in New York within blocks.
Yeah.
Why am I looking at the Edinburgh Festival? They have not done a job. They don't need me there. Obviously, they're doing well enough.
Yeah.
But they haven't sent out the information for someone who isn't looking. And I wonder if that's our problem in all of theater. The people who aren't looking, who aren't in love with theater, don't get the information because they don't have no reason to look. They go to the movies or they watch Netflix. So how are they going to learn? Oh, all you have to do is hit this one button on your computer and you can get tickets to Wicked Live. It's not that simple. Everything sounds like it's 5 or 6 steps, and people are generically lazy when it comes to things they don't understand.
Well, I think it's a festival. Like I don't know all 308 shows that are in Fringe Arts Festival. I know that there is a guide, and but you whittle it down to, you're not looking. when it's a festival, you're not necessarily looking for a specific show. You're looking to curate the window of time that you're in there. And so you start thinking about what you're interested in seeing, not necessarily what is the
You're
hottest show.
misunderstanding my point. I'm not going to your festival in Philly. Why not? I don't know anything about it other than what you generally have told me. And it's easy enough for me to get to Philly. Somebody there has to give me a reason to make it exciting, even though I'm not looking it up. How do we reach a larger audience? This is the problem we've talked about for years
Mhm.
in this podcast. How do we reach a larger audience that isn't already in love with theater? You have to reach out. That's the outreach reach portion. It's not, oh, there's a website. Why aren't you looking?
Well, you've already said that there are certain shows that you wouldn't go to anyway, so
Yeah.
the outreach to you wouldn't necessarily work. I honestly think that there is this conversation. We are under the assumption that there are theater people who can't find us, which I think is not true. I don't, people who want something, they will find it. Like
I'm talking
even,
about the non-theater people. That's what I'm
but the
explaining.
non-theater people are non-theater people, you know?
Yes, but they're the ones who give us the money, and and that's our biggest problem.
Is somebody giving us money that doesn't have an interest in theater at all?
Yes, that's who bought the $2,000 tickets to Hamilton. That's who bought the $971 tickets to Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, but you
These are
know why
non.
though?
It doesn't matter why. They heard
But you
that
know why?
Denzel. Why?
They want to be in the room where it happens.
Yeah, okay,
And so
but
and so they're paying to say they were there. They're not paying because they're hardcore fans. I mean,
right,
but some of them might be.
or they might become
True.
right because
Well,
so
no,
the
but think about it. Y- We're basically saying that we have to find a way to coax people into becoming theater people.
Yep. Well, we do it all the time. We invite every high school student in New York City free of charge to a Broadway show.
Hmm.
What do you think that is? We're
Yeah, but
forcing them into a place they don't understand, and unless their teacher gives them, or sometimes the show does a good job, but
mhm.
sometimes they go see a show that isn't very good.
But it's not exactly blind. Like if a school is going to take a trip here, there's probably a lesson plan attached to this. And so there is a reason to come see this live. And they might get especially if it's like a specific field trip where they might get to talk to somebody, like perhaps they do understand, they get to learn about the inner workings of theater. um but I think like I think the conversation is usually like we're trying to find a person walking on the street and talk them into coming into the theater, like those buskers do to get people into a comedy show. It's like, do you like laughter? Come see this show. And it was like, I wasn't planning on a comedy show. I'm not just gonna go in because you're out here. You know.
Okay, I'm going to end since we're toward the end of the podcast. I want to end. I want to end with a very funny and worthwhile story that relates to what you just said.
Okay.
For those who may know it, there's a show that was called Starmites. It was based on Barry, I apologize, the playwright. It was a musical based on a girl who loves comic books, and there were monsters and aliens and all sorts of stuff in it. And the music was really good and blah blah. It was not a hit, but I was the manager of the show. The lead the lead actress in it, who was nominated for a Tony, her name is Sharon McKnight. She does a lot of cabaret, and she's just a wonderful, wonderful person and performer. So Sharon had the aura of being a come up and see me sometime. What's her
Mhm.
name? Um,
May was that May West?
May West. May
Yeah.
West. That's the way she kind of carried herself. And every day I would go backstage and pass by her dressing room. I'd say, Sharon, anything you need. And she would always say, a man in uniform or get me some sailors or something. You know, she'd always have some quip. So in New York City, over Memorial Day weekend, we have something called what do you call it? The entire Navy shows up. It's Fleet Week
Fleet
here
Week.
in New York, and I'm going to the theater in Times Square, and there are about 7 sailors standing next to me on the corner at the stoplight, and we weren't selling tickets. So I look over at them and I say, "Excuse me, you see that marquee over there? Would you like to see that musical for free? And you can bring some more friends. Here's my number. If you can come while you're in town, I will get you in for free. One thing you have to promise me, you come 15 minutes early with as many sailors as you can, and let me know and meet me in the lobby and come backstage. I want you to meet the leading actress." So 14 of them show up. We go into the green room. I call Sharon, who is still in her bathrobe. I take her into the green room. I say, "Sharon, you asked for a sailor. Here they are." And she looks at them, and without flinching, she says, "How many are here?" I say, 14. She says, "One of you has got to go."
What?
I mean, everyone fell down. They came in, they saw the show, they came out, and they actually, even though this was not a hit, said, "We had a wonderful time. We're telling our friends about it." And that was it. I'm sure somebody in that group has come back and seen another show. Sometimes that's how you do it. It's a one-on-one. Here's a special story you can tell your friends. So that's the way I'm trying to end this on an up note.
Come up and see me sometime.
Just come up and see me sometime.
All right. Yeah, that is a great way to end. And that's the business of theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And we'll see you at the theater.
Bye.